skies over Germany, 1943. Formation after formation of Allied bombers fight their way through a storm of metal and fire. From 20,000 feet, the world below is smoke and flame, and above them, the Luftwaffe rules the air. Eagle leader, we've lost 2 more. We need cover. But there is no cover. Every escort fighter has already turned back, out of fuel, out of range. The bombers are alone now, flying straight into the heart of the Reich. They called it the 1,000-plane gamble, sending men and metal deep into enemy territory, hoping a few would return. By late 1943, that hope was fading. Daylight bombing was becoming suicide. Then, something appeared on the horizon, sleek, silver, unfamiliar. A machine built not for defense, but for dominance. It flew faster, higher, and farther than anything before it. For the first time, bombers would no longer be alone. Its name was the P-51 Mustang, and when it arrived, everything changed. It was 1943, the midpoint of the Second World War. Across Europe, cities were burning, armies were exhausted, and the outcome of the air war was uncertain. The Allied command believed that victory could be achieved by striking at the industrial heart of Germany, destroying the factories, oil refineries, and railways that kept the Nazi war machine alive. To do that, thousands of American and British bombers flew daylight missions over enemy territory. Their goal was simple: cripple Germany's ability to fight. But the cost was unbearable. Each mission sent hundreds of bombers into a sky ruled by the Luftwaffe, and without long-range escort fighters, they were easy prey. The early escorts, like the P-47 Thunderbolt and the Spitfire, were powerful but limited. They could only protect the bombers for part of the journey before running out of fuel and turning back. Once they did, the bombers were left defenseless, facing waves of German Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. Entire squadrons were wiped out before reaching their targets. By late 1943, Allied losses were catastrophic. Some bomber groups saw over 50% of their aircraft destroyed in a single mission. Crews began calling the flights over Germany the meat grinder. Commanders faced an impossible choice: stop the bombing campaign and lose momentum, or continue and risk losing their airmen faster than they could be replaced. The skies were becoming a graveyard of burning aluminum and falling parachutes. And yet, in the middle of this chaos, a small American company was working on something that could change everything. A sleek, fast fighter that could fly farther than anyone thought possible. Its name had barely been heard in the war rooms of London or Washington, but soon it would be spoken with reverence: the P-51 Mustang.
At the center of this story was a man who refused to accept defeat. Edgar Schmood, the chief designer behind what would become the P-51 Mustang. Born in Germany but working in America, Schmood had a vision that went beyond borders or politics. To him, aircraft were more than machines. They were the embodiment of freedom, speed, and survival. He worked for North American Aviation, a company known for building trainers, not frontline fighters. When the British came knocking in 1940, desperate for new aircraft to counter the Luftwaffe, North American promised to design and build a fighter in just 120 days, a claim so bold that even the RAF doubted it could be done. Schmood poured his obsession into the blueprints. He imagined a plane that could slice through the air with minimal drag, combining raw power with grace. Every curve of the fuselage, every angle of the wing was designed for one purpose: efficiency. He wanted a fighter that could outclimb, outturn, and outlast anything else in the sky. But this wasn't just engineering. For Schmood, it was personal. He knew what the Luftwaffe was capable of. He had seen it rise from the ashes of the last war. Building the Mustang wasn't just about creating a weapon, it was about creating an answer. Around him, a small team of engineers worked day and night, sketching, testing, and rebuilding. The design was sleek and revolutionary, but unproven. When the prototype finally rolled out, no one could have predicted how much this machine would change history. It wasn't a big team, and it wasn't a big company. But in a war ruled by giants, sometimes it takes a handful of dreamers to tip the balance.
By 1942, the Allies faced a nightmare in the skies over Europe. Their bombers, B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, could reach Germany, but they couldn't make it home safely. Once they crossed deep into enemy airspace, the protective curtain of Allied fighters peeled away, forced to turn back because they didn't have the range. The Luftwaffe knew this, and they waited. Entire bomber squadrons vanished over the Rhineland, torn apart by German interceptors. Every mission became a gamble with death. The American strategy was clear but flawed. Send massive formations of bombers to overwhelm defenses with sheer numbers. But without fighter escort, those formations became easy targets. Each flight to Berlin cost hundreds of lives and millions of dollars in aircraft. Something had to change, fast. That's where the Mustang came in. On paper, it was fast, agile, and well-armed. But in combat, it suffered the same fatal flaw as every other Allied fighter: limited range. The Merlin engine hadn't been fitted yet. The early models could protect bombers for the first leg of the journey, but as the bombers pushed deeper into Germany, the Mustangs had to turn back. The skies beyond were a killing field. For the Allied High Command, the problem seemed unsolvable. You could have speed or you could have range, but never both. Every aircraft design in history had proven that trade-off to be true. The question wasn't just about performance, it was about physics. Fuel meant weight, and weight killed agility. No one had yet figured out how to build a long-range escort fighter that could also survive a dogfight. But Edgar Schmood refused to accept impossible. He believed the solution wasn't in adding more fuel, it was in rethinking everything from the engine to the wings. He studied the airflow, the drag, and the way power translated into endurance. He began to imagine a fighter that could stay with the bombers all the way to Berlin and bring them home again. The war in the air was shifting, and Schmood knew that if he failed, thousands of men would never return from their missions. The pressure was unimaginable. Yet in that pressure, the Mustang's destiny was forged. And the answer, as it turned out, was waiting in the form of a British engine that would change everything. In the spring of 1943, everything changed. A single decision to replace the Mustang's original Allison engine with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin transformed a promising aircraft into a legend. It wasn't just an upgrade, it was a complete rebirth. The Allison engine had served well at low altitudes, but gasped for breath above 15,000 feet. The bombers flew high, where the air was thin and the fight was fierce. That's where the Merlin thrived. It was designed for altitude, built for power, and perfected through years of brutal testing in the Spitfire. When engineers at Packard in Detroit began producing the Merlin under license, the American Mustang suddenly inherited British firepower with American muscle. The transformation was immediate. The new P-51B Mustang could climb faster, fly farther, and fight higher than anything the Luftwaffe could send against it. Its range nearly doubled with drop tanks, from a few hundred miles to more than 1,500. For the first time in the war, Allied fighters could escort bombers from England to Berlin and back again. The Hunters had become the Guardians. Pilots called it a miracle of engineering. The Mustang could now dive with the German Messerschmitts, outturn the Focke-Wulfs, and still have the fuel to fight all the way home. Luftwaffe aces who once picked off bombers at will suddenly found themselves hunted. The balance of power in the sky had shifted overnight. And it wasn't just about performance numbers, it was about psychology. For years, bomber crews had lived with the terror of crossing into German airspace knowing they were alone. When the first long-range Mustangs appeared alongside them deep over enemy territory, their morale skyrocketed. For the first time, they had hope. And hope, in war, is as powerful as any weapon. The Merlin Mustang wasn't just another fighter. It was the bridge between two worlds, British design brilliance and American industrial strength. Together, they produced an aircraft that defined the outcome of the air war. Every revolution has its spark, and for the Allies, that spark roared through 12 cylinders of supercharged fury. By early 1944, the skies over Europe no longer belonged to Germany. They belonged to the Mustang. Wherever the bombers went, the P-51s flew with them, sleek silver silhouettes cutting through the contrails like blades. Luftwaffe interceptors that once attacked with impunity now faced swarms of Mustangs waiting for them above the clouds. The hunter had become the hunted. Pilots who had flown countless missions without protection now watched in awe as the P-51s dove from altitude, breaking up enemy formations with surgical precision. The change was immediate and visible. Bomber losses dropped, mission success rates soared, and for the first time, daylight raids deep into Germany became survivable. The air war, once a brutal exchange of attrition, had turned decisively in favor of the Allies.
By D-Day, the P-51 Mustang was everywhere. It escorted bombers over Berlin, strafed German supply lines in France, and hunted enemy fighters over the Ardennes. Pilots spoke of its grace, how it felt more like an extension of their own will than a machine. One veteran described it best: when you flew the Mustang, you didn't just fly, you dominated. Even the enemy respected it. German ace Adolf Galland once admitted, "When I saw Mustangs over Berlin, I knew the war was lost." That statement wasn't poetic exaggeration, it was hard truth. The Mustang didn't just win dogfights. It broke the Luftwaffe's spirit. It stripped Germany of air superiority and made the skies a death trap for any pilot wearing the Iron Cross. But the Mustang's legacy didn't end in 1945. When the war was over, it became the blueprint for every long-range fighter that followed. Its design influenced jet aircraft, reconnaissance planes, and Cold War interceptors. It proved that speed, range, and power could coexist in one machine. Today, when a restored P-51 roars across the sky at an air show, the crowd feels something that numbers and blueprints can't capture. The echo of a time when human skill and engineering genius changed the fate of nations. The P-51 Mustang wasn't just a plane, it was freedom with wings. And in every polished rivet and screaming Merlin engine, you can still hear the sound that once signaled hope to thousands of men fighting far from home, the unmistakable roar of victory. The story of the P-51 Mustang isn't just about a machine. It's about what happens when vision, innovation, and necessity collide. In the crucible of war, where every failure costs lives, one aircraft rose above the rest, not because it was perfect from the start, but because people refused to stop improving it. From Edgar Schmidt's sketches to the roar of the Merlin engine, the Mustang was born from persistence, the human refusal to accept limits. It became more than a fighter. It became a symbol, a promise that no matter how impossible the challenge, creativity and courage could rewrite the rules. Every time it soared over Europe, it carried that message with it, tracing hope across the sky in silver contrails. For the bomber crews it protected, the sight of the Mustang meant survival. For the engineers who built it,
It meant triumph over physics. And for the pilots who flew it, it meant freedom, not just from enemy fighters, but from the fear that had haunted them for years. Today, the P-51 Mustang's legacy endures, not only in museums and air shows, but in every jet that takes off with the same blend of speed, range, and precision it pioneered. It taught the world that the right idea, executed with courage, can change history. So when you hear the thunder of a Merlin engine echoing across the sky, remember, that sound once meant hope. It meant home. It meant victory. The P-51 Mustang didn't just win a war. It defined what victory in the air would mean for generations to come.